And over the years, you've said, hey, why didn't you have more kids? Or I'd like to have a brother or sister. I said, well, actually, you do have a sister. She looked at my husband like, yeah, okay, what's the joke? And I said, no, you really do. And I showed her a picture and I said, do you recognize the background? Do you recognize the clothes? And then I could tell on her face when it all started to sink in that this might not be a joke.
Welcome to Finding Family DNA, the show about finding and connecting birth families with LA Morning News anchor Chris Schabel and Jay Rosenzweig, founder and CEO of birthparentfinder.com. And now, here's Chris and Jay.
Hi, and welcome to Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay. I'm Chris Schabel, local news anchor, but also, of course, the gentleman who is helped by this guy, Jay Rosenzweig, and his amazing company, birthparentfinder.com.
Well, thank you, Chris, so much. Before we get started with today's show, I just want to remind everyone to go on YouTube, like and subscribe to our show on YouTube, Finding Family DNA, and also support our show by going to Patreon at patreon.com, Finding Family DNA, and subscribe to our Patreon show. And there's things on Patreon that we don't share on our YouTube.
Exactly. We intentionally save some of the best stuff. You know, some of the more, there might be a question that if you watch the show, you're like, why didn't they ask about this? Normally that's on Patreon. I mean, we do want to make it special for the people who really want to get, in depth with some of the topics. So we save some stuff for Patreon. So there's probably the answer to what you might be thinking that we didn't address. We don't save like obvious things, but there's some like extra questions. It's like extra credit. You might want to get that extra credit because there's always something valuable in it. Now that we've gotten that out of the way, Jay, let's talk about today's show because it's very, very special.
It is. And it hits home with you because you have two sets of twins.
I do. I have two sets of twins, in vitro and then natural. So back in, I guess it would be 2000, which the timing is going to be very interesting to today's story because it almost lines up exactly. But back in 2000, my wife and I went through in vitro fertilization, and we came away with our set of twins in the year 2001. And then 2 years later, we weren't going through IVF again. We weren't taking any special drugs or anything like that. And then 2 years later, she became pregnant again. So we had another set of twins. So the first set of twins is, paternal. The second set, or fraternal because they're, IVF babies. They're more like sisters and how they look and all that kind of stuff. Super close, though. And the second set is identical, and they're amazingly close. So
I wonder what the odds on that are.
You know what? My understanding is once you teach your body what it's capable of, it's not that uncommon. Okay. So that's my understanding. I may be wrong, but that's what I've been taught over the years.
So that segues into today's story. This started in the fall of 2020. I get a phone call. It goes through our sales team. They get a phone call from a woman who was looking for her birth family. We took the case and solved it pretty quick. And she goes, by the way, I have a younger sister who was adopted, and she's looking for her birth family. Well, she wasn't looking for it. She knew who her birth family was because it wasn't a closed adoption. And we said, okay, what do you need to be done? She goes, well, she wants to have you because this is what I do. Mm-hmm. I'm trained to work with birth mothers. Been doing it for years. So I go, that doesn't seem like a problem. She goes, wait, she was an identical twin. I go, okay, go on. And she goes, well, she knows who her sister is, her twin sister, but the sister doesn't know who she is because the birth mother never told anyone and was kept a secret.
Right.
And her and her husband were the only people that knew that they had twins and placed one for adoption. Can you believe that?
Well, for me, it's a lot, because I know that I don't want to get ahead of ourselves,
right?
But I look forward to talking to the mother involved, and let's get to that. Keep going.
Okay, so I said I will help you. I'll do this. There's no extra charge for that. I'm reaching out. I'm just gonna reach out to the birth mother and tell her that this young lady. She's probably torn and she wants to meet her birth family, especially with a twin.
Right.
So, of course, I interviewed the adoptee, making sure she's in the right place and what her goals were. Mm-hmm. What do you want to know? She goes, well, I go on social media. I see my twin, but I'm told that I can't reach out to her until a certain time, until the birth mother's ready, because the birth mother never told anyone.
And again, that request is coming from the adoptive parent.
Right.
They're telling her, we know, the other family knows, but the other twin does not.
Not at all. Not the twin knows, not the grandmother of the birth mother. Her mother doesn't know. Her best friend doesn't know. The only people that knew were the birth mother and her husband, still married. They've been married for years. And it's sensitive because the daughter, who's an identical twin, doesn't know she's got a twin sister out there. So I reached out to the birth mother, never got a response. I shouldn't say never. It took a couple days.
Mm-hmm.
We're texting back and forth finally. She did her homework. And she's an investigator also.
Yeah.
And
so she investigated the investigator.
of course.
Yeah.
And I got to know the birth mother over a course of a few weeks. She trusted me. And I said, Dawn, her name is Dawn Voris. I said, Dawn, trust me. I'm going to make this work for you.
Right.
I'm going to do my best to reunite you with your daughter, who's a twin.
Mm-hmm.
And from that point, we will introduce Michaela to her twin sister.
And so you just gave the name away. So it's Dawn Voris, and her daughter that she kept
Was Michaela.
Of the twins is named Michaela.
Right.
All right. So the year is 2020, and what year was Michaela born?
They were born in 2001.
Gotcha. So she's roughly 18, 19 when you're putting these pieces together. How does that process go?
She was 19 going on 20.
Okay.
So it was tough because it's about convincing, not really convincing, but making Dawn understand that the adoptee wanted this. She wanted
Right.
this. She was over 18 now,
Right.
and she's known all this time that she had a twin sister. But can you imagine going on Facebook and on social media
Yeah.
and seeing someone that looks like you?
Well, I mean, there's a lot there to unpack, and we'll do that in a little bit. But I just think I applaud the strength of the we'll call her baby number 2.
Right.
We're not going to say her name, but I applaud the strength of baby number 2 because, a lot of kids, especially teenagers, can be impulsive. Even if she was told not to reach out, she would have upset an apple cart that wasn't ready. So I applaud her for having the internal or the intestinal fortitude to just do as her adoptive parents said. Don't reach out when the time is right. And was there a set time that had ever been established, or was it just when fate takes its course? Because I tell you what, that kind of stuff is hard to do in terms of keeping it quiet. But let me ask you this question: how far away did they live from each other?
Only an hour and a half. This was in Indiana.
And they lived only an hour and a half
That's
away
it.
from each other, and yet they had never met. Never bumped into each other at the grocery
Not
store.
that we
and
know
go,
of.
You could be my sister.
Right.
Never.
And
All
then
right.
and then when the adoptee is walking around, people see her and think she's the other one because it's only an hour and a half away. Like if you're in a mall or something and you see that person, they go, you look like someone I know.
Did that happen?
Apparently it happened once or twice.
Oh, wow. And
Yeah.
she was like, no, sorry.
Yeah. I mean, she was told that once you're 18, then it'll get readdressed.
Right.
And then that time came up.
And she was like, well, time's up. All right. So let's go back to the story that the painting that you're developing for us. So the sister of Michaela, excuse me, not Michaela, baby number 2,
Right.
gets in touch with you. Then she wants this to happen. So you contact Dawn. Dawn says what after you've gained her trust. What happens next?
It took a couple weeks for Dawn to get the strength and understanding and appreciate what I brought to the table to make this work. I set up a meeting
Okay.
so they could meet. This is right
In
right-
Indiana?
Indiana, right around Christmas. They
All
met
right.
halfway at a coffee shop.
Okay.
And
Is this all 3 of them?
with Dawn,
Mom,
her husband,
Michaela.
and Michaela was not there.
Oh,
She had
okay.
not told Michaela yet. She
Oh.
wanted to meet the daughter first.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, Michaela was not there. Step 1, meet your biological daughter.
Yeah.
Step 1, that meeting went great.
Were you there? Or
No,
they-
I would
you
no, I wasn't.
facilitated
I
it?
just set it up,
Gotcha.
and I was not there. We'll get into that later on when I went to Indiana. But it went really well. And then after that meeting, of course, baby number 2 wanted to meet her twin sister.
Sure, naturally.
So then Dawn and I are going back and forth. What do I tell Michaela? What do I tell Michaela? I'm saying, why don't you just tell her? What if I told you had a twin sister?
yeah.
And Dawn will talk more about that, but that's basically what she did. And
How soon after? So you have they have the meeting with baby number 2, the biological parents, and how soon after did Dawn tell Michaela?
That was within a few days, I believe.
Oh, wow. Okay.
If I'm not mistaken. And then I think a week later, the girls met.
With
just
Dawn
just
there?
the two of them.
Just the two of them?
Just the two of them. They recorded it. They took pictures.
Wow.
And it was beautiful.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Very nice.
And then they established a relationship moving forward for the next couple months.
And that's the part where I can't wait to see what happens next. And the person who can talk about that relationship is actually going to join us now via Zoom. It is the Dawn Voris. Dawn, hi to you.
Hi.
What you've heard so far, pretty accurate? Anything you want to tweak?
No, it's pretty accurate.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yeah. Jay does a lot of cases, and sometimes he's like, this happened. They're like, well, it was a little bit different. But here's my thing. I want you to stand by because we're going to take a commercial break, and then when we come back, we're going to really delve into something that I think a lot of people can't wrap their head around. That's a mother giving up one child for the sake of everyone involved. That's coming up on Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay.
This is Jay Rosenzweig, the founder and CEO of BirthParentFinder.com. If you're looking to find your birth parents or anyone in your birth family, give us a call at 866-572-3463 or go to our website, BirthParentFinder.com.
You're watching Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay, and via Zoom we are joined, by Dawn Voris. Dawn, you did something that I don't know that anyone could ever relate to. You made the difficult choice to give up one child, which is not uncommon, but that child is a twin. Can you take us back to that time in your life and what made you have to make such a very dramatic and drastic decision?
Well, my life was much different at the time. I was married, had no children yet. And when I found out, my husband had just gotten laid off from one of the biggest employers in town. So him and, many, many other people were looking for a job doing a similar thing. And he had not found anything yet. So I find this out, and yeah, I was really happy. And once I found out it was twins, it took me a little bit to wrap my mind around it because I just didn't expect it. And then I got back to, okay, he doesn't have a job right now. How are we going to do this?
And let me ask you this quick question, and sorry to interrupt you. Was this IVF like my wife and I did, or was this completely natural?
No, this was completely no help.
That had to be like do you have twins in your family? Because that's what I always get asked. Do we have twins in our family? And on my wife's side, we do. But do you have twins in your family?
The only twins I have I have cousins who are twins, but that's it.
Yeah, it's not like a common trait that you've seen repeated in your family tree. Gotcha. So take us back to 2020, I believe. 2020. So you make that. Actually, I'm going to even go back further. Let's not rush away from this decision. So the year is 2000 when you find out you're pregnant, correct? The girls were born in 2001. Okay, so
right.
So the year is 2000. You're pregnant with twins. Tell me about the discussion you have with your husband. Who has the guts to say to the other one first, maybe we need to give one up for financial reasons?
I can't really say. Mm-hmm. Because I honestly don't remember. But we talked about everything and, what we were going to do. And he had a real good job at the time, but the rug got pulled out from under us.
Sure.
And that wasn't changing anytime soon. So we talked about it, and I had a great childhood. When I was growing up, my parents weren't rich, but we didn't go without. I'll say that.
Sure.
And I got to do things and go places. And of course, I wanted to raise my kids like that. And at the time, I didn't know how that would happen with two at once. I'm the only breadwinner at the time. There's babysitting and all that. My parents were getting older, they were retired, and I couldn't figure out how I was going to give them a similar life to what I had with that situation.
So
So there was a lot of soul searching.
Sure. So you and your husband make this
Go ahead.
just gut wrenching decision. How does it play out? How does it play out with giving birth? How long, whether it was hours or days, were both, babies together before you gave one up for adoption? And then did you have a hand in arranging the family that would be adopting her? Kind of walk us through that process of the decision is made. How long did you get to spend with baby number 2 before you gave baby number 2 up to this other family? And who is that family, and how did you come to that arrangement?
Well, that was decided before I gave birth. We went to an agency and who I thought I could trust the person that I was set up with. And I had a few choices that, we could look at, learn about them. And I picked one because they seemed to be closer to us. They lived in the country, they had animals, and I love animals. And I just thought, I bet my kids will love animals too. So we thought that was the closest pick from what we were told about them. So that was done a few months before.
So I have a quick question. Sorry to interrupt. So you said you wanted to pick a family that lived close. Why was that important to you?
No, not live close, but closer to what we were.
Got it. Okay, that clarifies that.
Culturally.
Yeah.
Meaning like they like the same things. They would raise the other child in a manner that would be similar to how you planned on raising Michaela.
Right.
Gotcha.
From what I was told.
Sure.
Right.
So how long did you have with baby number 2 in the hospital?
I probably wasn't supposed to have any.
Oh.
But I did go down and see her and talk to her. And any more than that, I couldn't handle.
I completely understand. So for you give this child to a family that you can relate to, basically a family that you support, at least in theory, based on what you know. After you give the child baby number 2 up, tell me about how you raised Michaela, and did you ever think about how baby number 2 was doing?
Every day. She hangs the moon. She's my daughter.
Yes.
And not that they both aren't. And I've wondered and worried about the other one ever since that day. I've seen a little bit before we met pictures. They used to send pictures, and I love to see them. I really did, but it just broke my heart. So it was just so hard.
That's fascinating to me. So the family that baby number 2 was adopted by, so they would occasionally, was it annually, but they would send you stuff just to keep you updated. So how often was that?
At first it was every few months maybe. And then it dwindled to nothing.
Oh yeah, over time, over years probably. And so for you, was that understandable, and was it preferred, or was it just the way of the world and you keep on going?
It wasn't preferred. No, I would have loved anything that they told me or they sent. And I think a part of me didn't complain enough because it was so painful when I did get them.
Right.
But I'd much rather have seen them than not.
Sure. Very understandable. So let's fast forward. It's 2020, and this guy contacts you. Tell me how he contacted you, and then what went through your mind when he did.
Actually, I think my husband got the text first, and he showed it to me, and I said, okay, I thought she knew who we were. So I was a little bit surprised that she uh, asked somebody to find us, but I I don't know for sure. So we talked about it a couple days and thought, okay, well, if she wants to meet us, then we needed to do that. And we thought it was also probably a pretty good time to tell Michaela that, she existed and now she was old enough and she could understand and then hopefully have a relationship with her.
Sure. How did that conversation go when you decided to tell Michaela?
Um, my husband, he's kind of known for making jokes out of things. Some aren't really funny, but
I think most spouses think that about their spouse, or at least let me put it another way.
Yeah,
my wife says I'm
probably.
not as funny as I think I am. So
There you go.
I can relate.
Yeah.
So
It was right after Christmas, and we sat her down, and she thought there was something bad going on, but I told her I just really wanted to talk to her and have her listen. It wasn't anything bad, but I said, I know over the years you've said once in a while that, hey, why didn't you have more kids? Or I'd like to have a brother or sister. And I said, how would you like one?
Hmm.
She laughed. I said, well, actually, you do have a sister. And she looked at my husband like, yeah, okay, what's the joke? And I said, no, you really do. And I showed her a picture. And she said, when did you take that? And I said, do you recognize the background? Do you recognize the clothes? And then I could tell on her face when it all started to sink in that this might not be a joke. And all in all, she was thrilled and took it really well. She understood why. She never ever said, I wish you wouldn't have done it. She's only said, and you have to understand, she says what she thinks. That she said, no, I get it. I get it. And I wouldn't have had the life I had. And I understand. I'm glad you did it.
Is that how you expected it to go, or did you think it was going to?
No.
You thought it would be much different. You thought she would be maybe traumatized.
Much different.
And I've talked to Michaela numerous times.
Different.
Yeah.
And Michaela always says, it's not about forgiving what my mother did. It's about understanding what she did.
Very wise. Very wise. And that statement, I mean, I know that's third person, but it sounds like she has a good sense of understanding and a lack of judgment about the entire
And she also
situation.
said that during my interview with her, too.
Right.
So.
Oh, well, there you go. Well, then there's that. What was the next step after Michaela accepted this? It was meeting. Jay talked about Michaela meeting baby number 2 without you. Was that your idea? Was it Michaela's idea? Was it Jay's idea? And then tell me how that went based on what feedback you got.
I think it was Jay's idea, but it was probably the best to just have them be for them. It was hard. It really was. But I think it went great from what I've heard and what I've seen. And she was just totally thrilled, really happy.
So you met her first, went well. Then Michaela met her without you. Okay, that goes well. And then is this still 2020 or 2021?
This is the end of 2020, right, Dawn?
Okay.
Right.
So you've both met. Tell us what happens with the relationship after you've reunited.
We texted back and forth. Michaela talked to her numerous times, texted and laughed over what they had in common and what they had in common with me and things that they liked and so on. Then we did meet one time, all three of us. She came up here and she went and met my mother, her grandmother, and that went really well. And we met again at a little cafe, had lunch. That went well. And their birthday was coming up. So they planned on or we had planned on having a little party, nothing big, just them and a few friends. And that was, after that was seems to be where it all went wrong.
I'm sorry to hear that. And before we get into that, I want to backtrack because you said something that I want to make sure we kind of dig into before we move on. You said you told your mom, the grandmother of Michaela and baby number 2. How did I mean, mom must have been like, wait, what? I mean, tell us about how your mother took the news.
It was tough on her. Of course, she couldn't wrap her head around why, because, well, she would have watched them, but she couldn't have. In honesty, she was traveling, she was going places, which she should be able to do. And it was more like, hindsight. But she did her best to understand. And
Yeah.
she just wanted to meet her.
And did she?
Yes, she got to.
Oh, I like that.
And she passed away, what, last year?
She did.
See, that's special to have that kind of opportunity before things change permanently like that. I've lived it. So like my birth mother passed away 2 years after I met her. So for me to actually meet my birth mother was so special, and the timing couldn't have been better for me. Don't want to put that on you, Dawn. All right, we're going to take a quick break right here, but when we come back, we're going to delve into the relationship now. What went wrong? We kind of got into that, but also Jay's role in making this all happen, because I know you put a lot of resources into making this happen. I want to talk about that because it was a special time for you. I mean, when you got twins that have been separated like that, and to have them reunite, it's one of the biggest kind of reunification stories you can have. But we're going to delve into all of that right after this break. You're watching Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay.
Being a birth parent is a lot like joining a club that nobody wants to be a member of. It's a lifetime of loss, disenfranchised grief, and erasure. And without On Your Feet, most birth parents would have nowhere to turn.
No idea where I would be without On Your Feet. On Your Feet is the reason why I went back to school. On Your Feet is the reason why I have a therapist now. On Your Feet is the reason why I can genuinely smile.
Providing the tools, resources, and community that birth parents deserve in order to rebuild and thrive. In 2023, On Your Feet served 582 birth parents, a 40% increase from the previous year, including 102 new clients in 46 states and 2 countries. Visit their website to learn more about their mission and to help them ensure that every birth parent who needs help receives it.
Welcome back. We have on with us Dawn Voris, who's a birth mother who had twins and placed one for adoption back in 2001. And Dawn, I want to pick this up where everything was going great. They were going to be 20 years old on the 20th of February, correct?
Right.
And you had planned a party. Everything was going fine. But a couple of days before that, there was a newspaper article in the local newspaper covering the story. Is that right?
That's right.
And the adopted parents obviously weren't happy about the article, and the adoptee, everything just went wrong. What happened, and why didn't she show up at the party? You want to get into that a little bit?
Okay. I'm not sure why it was a big deal with the newspaper article. She was asked if she wanted to do it, and she said yes and signed off, and that was fine. And she talked to the person from the paper, and everything was done the way it was supposed to be. But I guess we got feedback that her parents didn't like the article being put in the paper and acted like they didn't know about it, which was between her and them, I thought. So I'm not sure why that was an issue, but a couple days before the party, she let us know that she couldn't make it. And I said, oh, okay, well, is there a reason we can help with? And she said there was supposed to be a snowstorm and the roads were bad. Or we said, well, we can come get you. It was no big deal. But she said, no, she didn't want to.
Mm.
And left it at that. If she didn't want to, she didn't want to. So we didn't have it. And I just had a birthday for one and went on.
That was 2021. Where does the relationship stand now? And again, we have no intention of disparaging anybody. I just want to get an understanding because, you know, these reunifications can go in a lot of different directions. But where does the relationship stand now with baby number 2?
We don't have one.
Mm.
I tried to reach out at least a couple times and was told pretty bluntly that she wanted nothing to do with me and to stay out of her life and never contact her again. So that's what I've done. Yeah. Yeah.
And she sent you a letter too, didn't she?
That was a text. Now, the letter she sent saying she wanted to meet us, we never got. She sent it through the agency and we never received it. Or I would have reached out myself at that time.
So let's just kind of big picture everything. You made a very tough decision more than 20 years ago. 20 years later, you have the reunification with baby number 2, the twin. Initially, it goes well, and then sours. But just in terms of the overall clarity that you have been given about this process, what are your general thoughts? Are they, hey, I gave it my best shot, I'm really glad to know she's doing okay? Or what do you say to yourself about the whole entire process?
I don't want to discourage somebody from doing it. If it were me, I would want to meet my birth parent. Of course, I wish we could have a relationship. And I thought it would be great. She could have the best of both families. Who could want more than that? But that wasn't for me to say. I can't change what she thinks. I think you have to be very careful about the family you pick. If I had it to do over, I would not have picked the family that I did. But I can't change that now. I still hope that one day she will decide for herself that she might want to have us at least on a cordial terms, at least talk to us once in a while. I pray very often that she'll want us in her lives someday. But that's all I can do at this point.
And there's a lot of naysayers out there that disagree with what you did, and there's also people that support what you did.
I know.
So what do you say to those naysayers?
Nobody can walk in my shoes except me, and nobody did except me. It wasn't an easy decision. It was heart-wrenching, and it is to this day. But I feel like I gave them both better lives.
So saying that last part kind of makes me ask this question. If you had it all to do over again, knowing every single thing that you know, knowing when your financial situation would get better, and maybe it wasn't going to be as doom and gloom as maybe you initially thought. I'm not putting words in your mouth. It's just a question. So knowing everything you know now, would you have still given up baby number 2?
Well, if we could look in a crystal ball, that would be great. But nobody can yet. Actually, it wasn't long after that. I was job eliminated after 21 years. So it took quite a while for things to get better. Quite a while. So I don't know if I could look in that crystal ball, I really can't say. I really can't say.
And if you
I wish he could.
if you did have the two children and kept them together, they wouldn't have had the resources that they have today and been the people that they are today. Is that correct?
That's correct. Absolutely not. Nothing close. No.
Can you give me an example of that? Because I know Michaela is a champion Arabian horse rider. Is that correct?
She is.
And her twin, from what I understand, was a champion rodeo rider at some point.
From what I understand, yeah.
So they have that, the riding the horses.
She picked well in terms of the other family, in terms of having likes. That's pretty impressive. Let me ask you this. When your story, thanks to Jay and the work that you guys did together as a family, when these stories started coming out, some of them were very high profile. You mentioned the newspaper article. I think there was even something out of Britain.
Yeah, the British tabloids covered the story, but it never got picked up. It never really went viral. It never happened. But
it was out there. And I'm sure what was the reaction in the community when the article came out? Did you have people going, I had no idea?
Oh, yeah, yeah. My closest friend, she had no idea. But that's the way it had to be at the time. If I had a chance to live, a normal life along the way, I just had to do it that way. And people judge. They still do. They say, well, if it were me, you can't say if it were you because you were not in these shoes.
Exactly.
You don't have the same situation. You weren't me. You weren't us. So you can't really say that.
Right. And I went into this whole thing not judging Dawn.
Right.
That's how, in the beginning, this worked out.
Well, I think Dawn said it best. You can't walk in my shoes.
Yeah.
I'm the only one who can walk in, or she's the only one that can walk in her shoes and her husband's shoes. And, as a father of twins, I know my thought process, but my thought process is based on my reality and whatever resources I have available, at the time when my kids are being born. I think any parent will tell you it's always tough to raise a kid. It's always financially difficult at times. But you can't walk in someone else's shoes. And that's the one thing that I really want to just really make sure that you understand, Dawn, that we're getting across so that we understand is that this isn't about judgment. These are facts. Things happened. And we're just trying to help our audience understand your journey and the journey as it stands now. How is Michaela taking the lack of relationship with baby number 2? I call her baby number 2 because that's just simple.
It's hard. It's really, really hard on her. It wasn't her choice. She couldn't change it. I don't know why she seems like the bad guy. I don't understand why she won't talk to us. I can only guess, and I don't know the truth behind it, so I won't say, but Michaela is extremely hurt by it, and she would love to have a relationship with her.
And by the way, we're going to talk about that in our Patreon segment, just so you know.
What specifically?
We're going to talk about some of the reasons why this didn't go well.
All right. Without, yeah, just keeping it factual. Keep it factual. That's my job. Keep it factual. So Dawn, when we're about to end the podcast, but before we do, message to other people looking to reunite with their family members.
Oh, go for it. Definitely go for it. You'll be amazed at what relationship you might be able to have, and what is there to lose?
And being reconnected, no regrets about being reunited.
No, absolutely not. It was so amazing to meet her, and it was a day that I will never ever forget, and I hope it won't be the last.
And one thing that you didn't address was, what kind of work does Michaela do?
She's a dog groomer.
And what about her twin?
She's a dog groomer.
Oh,
how do you like
what
that?
What are the
Chris?
chances of that? Wow, that's pretty cool. That's amazing. Dawn Voris, thank you for being so vulnerable and transparent about your journey. No, I don't think anyone. I would defy. Find me someone else who's had this journey. You know what I mean? So thank you so much for sharing your very unique experience with us. And you said something, and I hope this isn't the end for you, Michaela, and baby number 2. If it is the will of the Lord that you find each other again in the future, I hope that is the path that is taken. So thank you so much for coming on our show. We are going to get into some more questions in our Patreon segment, and you're going to tease that.
I will. And we're going to talk about me going to Indiana back in May of 2021 to find out what happened, get the truth, interview a bunch of people. We were hoping to interview the adoptee, baby number 2, but that didn't happen. And I'll talk about all of that in our Patreon segment.
You're watching Finding Family DNA with Chris and Jay.
If you want exclusive bonus segments of these episodes, join our Patreon at patreon.com/findingfamilydna. And if you are looking to start the journey of finding your family DNA, just go to birthparentfinder.com. Thank you for joining us on Finding Family DNA.
What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and